Hello, and welcome to Inspire Tokyo. I'm Chris Galucci. The Inspire Tokyo podcast is brought to you by Kikoku Shijo Academy in Tokyo, Japan. On this show, we interview leading figures in science, the arts, education, business, and politics to help young bilingual students learn more about potential career paths for their future. Today on the show, my guest is Chris Green. He is the Second Secretary and Consul at the Embassy of Ireland in Japan. He has served in Japan for 2 years and works on general consular matters, as well as issues concerning agriculture and food, energy and environment, and sports. Prior to his posting in Japan, Chris worked in Consular Division at the headquarters of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade in Dublin. Before becoming a diplomat, he worked in Ireland as a press officer for a political party. Have you ever wondered what a diplomat does every day? If they mostly attend fancy parties with other countries' important leaders? Or if they are busy reading about foreign policy for 8 hours a day? In this podcast, Chris walks us through a typical day of work at the embassy. Our conversation transitions from politics to sports. Ireland is currently ranked number 2 in the world in rugby. And as Japan is preparing to host the Rugby World Cup in 2019 and play in a tough group that includes Ireland, Chris speaks about how the Irish embassy is preparing for the big event. Finally, Chris shares his thoughts on what kind of characteristics and skills are required to do the work of a diplomat. If you've dreamed of working in foreign affairs and representing your country, this is advice you should definitely hear. And with that, here is my interview with Chris Green. All right, Chris, thanks for being with us here today.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
So, just to get started, can you walk us through a typical day at your job? So, you come in the morning, and typically, what are the first things that you do?
Well, I'd start off by saying there's no such thing as a typical day in the line of work I do, which is actually great. It makes it really interesting. But you know, to be straight, I guess the first thing I come in and do in the morning is I check my email, like everyone does in their jobs. One of the things about working overseas is that we're on a different time schedule to Ireland. You know, currently it's an 8-hour difference, which means 5 p.m. here is 9 a.m. in Dublin. So, you know, you often have to stay in later just to get people on the phone and things like that. But anyway, you come in the morning and you've obviously had a lot of emails overnight. So first things first is check those and you see is anything urgent. The next thing is to talk to my team. I have a team of 4 people who report directly to me, and you know, I'll see what's going on with them. What you know, if maybe the previous day I had to leave a bit early for an event or something like that, and just find out what happened. See what emails they got overnight. Is there anything that needs to be dealt with right away? And then after that, I guess probably talking to my boss, talking to the ambassador, seeing what's going on for them. What do they want to get done that day? So really, it's communication with HQ, communication with my team. After that, in the morning, I guess it's doing tasks, and then midday. By midday, maybe I have an event to go to, a lunch. There could be a speaker, or just meeting up with some contacts. Like at least 1 or 2 days a week, I try to find someone who is useful for us for one reason or another, and I meet them and see what's going on, and try to move things along. Afternoons, frequently meetings with people who are coming in, who maybe want stuff from us or we want things from them. And then, like I said, once you start getting towards the afternoon, you're thinking about Dublin waking up. You're thinking about who do I need to talk to, or do I actually need to stay in the office at all? Am I going to be going out and going to an event that evening? And when I go to events, I usually like to try and do a little bit of research in advance. It's not always possible because of time, but it's good to know where you're going and who you're meeting, and to try and have something in mind that you that person you want to speak to and to get something from. So that would be a typical office day.
Got it. So now, this is a question that came to mind when you said that you are looking to talk to people that are looking for things from you. Are these typically people in the Japanese community, or do you do work with people from other countries, from other embassies?
Yeah. Typically, it would be people from the Japanese community, be they, civil society organizations or government agencies, people like that, politicians as well. But we work really, really, really closely with the other European embassies. Over in Hiro, there's the EU delegation, which is, the equivalent of an EU embassy to Japan. And usually at least once a week, if not more, I will be over there for a meeting, say, of all the European diplomats who work on agriculture will have a meeting once a month. All those who work on consular issues will have a meeting once a month, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, we work with the EU as well. But then as well there are we have very good relations with the English-speaking embassies. The Canadians, New Zealand, South Africa, the US, the British, obviously, as part of the EU. So yeah, that's kind of our community that we deal with quite a lot.
Excellent. So you touched upon, or you said something a few times during your talk that stuck with me, and how this type of work, being able to represent your country and work for your country, is great. Would you say that is the most fulfilling aspect of your job, or are there other parts of it that also stand out to you?
I think certainly the most fulfilling aspect is representing the country, is going to an event and representing the country. And when people are really, really honoured that you're there, and that as a representative of the Irish government, you have taken the time to show up and demonstrate that this matters to us. This is important for what we see as the broader Japan-Ireland relationship. But also, one of the most frustrating and difficult and time-consuming and also really rewarding parts is helping Irish people. The reason it can be difficult and frustrating is because you can't always help people. People, maybe have unrealistic expectations, or they have quite serious problems that you can't help them with. But then again, there are people who come in with what to them seem like really, really big problems, and you're able to do stuff for them, and people leave and they're happy. And then when you get that email back, maybe a few weeks later, saying thank you so much, you really saved us, that really does make it feel all worthwhile. And it's the good certainly outweighs the bad on that side.
Right. And now these are Irish citizens in Japan that you're helping.
Exactly. I mean, it could be tourists who are coming here, and maybe luckily we don't have so many robberies or things like that, but people lose passports, and it seems like they're not going to be able to leave the country. Or there's the long-term Irish community here who need the various different forms and things that have to be signed by an embassy. Those types of administrative jobs, which can seem quite simple, but they mean a lot to people, and you have to get them done quickly.
I have to ask. I think a lot of people can understand the feeling, not personally, but that representing your country must be special. But that also comes with a lot of responsibility. Have you ever felt nervous or afraid or unsure of what you were about to say because it would reflect upon your whole country?
Absolutely, on a regular basis. It's nerve-wracking, especially when I first came here. When you're back at HQ, you have a lot of support. There's a really strict hierarchy, and you kind of know exactly what you're doing. And then when you suddenly go overseas, especially if you're in a small embassy like ours is, with only three diplomats and a really, really great team, but a small team of Japanese staff. All of a sudden you're showing up at these events or these meetings, and you're expected to say something, and it better be smart, and you want to be careful that you don't say the wrong thing. So for sure, especially when I first came here, it was really daunting to go into these meetings with other diplomats and with the Japanese government and stuff. But I think you do kind of grow into it, and you learn your policy areas, and you kind of get a feeling for what's right and what's not. So it's a learning process all the time.
So after taking up this position and talking to people about your job, like friends back home or family members, what has been the biggest misunderstanding that you found that people have about what diplomats do? Yeah,
I mean, the common kind of understanding is that it's a lot of fancy parties and a lot of nice drinks and nice dinners, and for sure there is that side of it. You do get to go, and you get to meet these really interesting people at these really interesting events. However, the thing that's not really thought about is that it is work. You don't just go and just eat the dinner and then leave. Because the next day your boss goes, who did you meet? Who did you speak to? What did you do? What did you learn? So you really have to be switched on a lot of the time. And even when you're not in work and you're not at a work event and you could just be out, there's always the chance that someone who knows you is going to see you. So kind of at all times you do have to be quite sensible and conscious of the fact that you're representing your country no matter what it is you're doing.
So in your work in representing your country here in Japan, you've had the opportunity, I think, to talk to a lot of Japanese people. What has surprised you the most about what Japanese people either do know about Ireland or don't know about Ireland?
I think 100% the thing that really surprised me when I first came here is just how many Japanese people loved Ireland. I came over here and I was introduced to one of the many Irish music societies, or the Irish Culture Societies, the Irish Literature Society, the Irish Network Japan, and there are just people here who really love Ireland, and it's so it's really fills your heart with pride when you meet these people, and they invest so much of their free time and often their money and just in doing stuff out of the goodness of their heart because they love it, to support the country. We had 13 St. Patrick's Day parades around Japan this year, from Okinawa, Kyoto, Kumamoto, obviously Tokyo and Yokohama, and there's a lot of them, and it's just, when I first came here I was like, I would have been surprised if we had one,
Right.
I assumed there'd be one, but to hear that there was, I think there was 14 last year and 13 this year, so I was completely taken aback, and I vividly remember last year I went to the Yokohama St. Patrick's Day parade, and I thought it was going to be 20 people and maybe a dog, and we were going to walk down the street, and in the middle of Yokohama there was I think 300 plus marchers and a few thousand people lining the streets, and as I was getting closer to where the parade was going to happen, there was this is still a 5-minute walk, right? I see little kids on the street with Irish flags. I'm like, this is strange. There's
Wow.
There's a really big audience here, so that completely blew me away since I got here.
And so, given that, so there is a lot of love for Ireland here in Japan. Is there any part of Irish culture, food, sport, heritage that you wish not just Japan but the rest of the world knew more of? If you had one item that you could export everywhere, what would that be?
I think what we would like to export is the knowledge of Ireland as a tourist destination, and then to import hopefully all those tourists. We're doing okay at the moment in terms of Japanese tourists, but we'd really like it to be more. Ireland has bags of history, stunning scenery, great culture and nightlife, and tourists who go there seem to love it, and we just, a lot of what we're doing at the moment is promoting that through social media, through a year and a half ago setting up a Japanese language tourism website, and holding events, and we've started sending out newsletters and stuff. So it's small, but it's growing and growing, and we see a lot of potential there for the future. So that's one of our really, really big kind of public diplomacy goals.
As a tie-in to that, so the Rugby World Cup is coming to Japan in 2019, and Ireland is on the rise.
Yeah.
Number 2 in the world,
That's right.
I believe you said.
Yeah.
What could you just talk about what would that mean for Ireland to come to Japan and win that tournament for pride, of course, but also for tourism, a way to attract people?
For sure, we see the Rugby World Cup as kind of a once-in-a-generation opportunity to promote Ireland. Rugby is not the number 1 sport in Japan. I don't think it's not the number 2 or the number 3. I mean, it's 5th, 6th, something like that. So it's not the biggest sport. But when 2019 comes along, people are suddenly going to start waking up to the fact that, wow, we're hosting the second biggest sports tournament in the world, and oh my God, Japan are in this group with this country, Ireland, and oh my God, they're the second in the world, and we're going to play each other in Shizuoka. So on that day, on the 28th of September next year, there are going to be probably millions of people in Japan looking at Ireland. So specifically on that day, we see it as a huge opportunity to just promote general knowledge. We're also planning a program of events, around the country in the various places where we're playing. Economic lunches, briefing sessions, meeting the local community. We really want to do some cultural events, get involved with schools, universities, in those who have rugby teams. So it's all go, and it's keeping me very, very busy at the moment. But it's just this unbelievable opportunity to raise the profile here, and in 2002, Ireland played some games here for the World Cup, and that really gave Ireland a huge boost in Japan at the time, and we still see the legacy of that in terms of the Irish pubs that were opened up following that, and the Irish people who came and had an unbelievable time and took that love of Japan back with them, and the Japanese people here who fell in love with Ireland due to the conduct of the team and the fans and just the general good attitude that they brought. So it's like I said, it's a once in a generation opportunity.
In terms of convincing or interesting Japanese people to visit Ireland, is it better for Ireland to win that game, or lose the game? Can you have a draw in the World Cup?
You can have a draw.
Okay. So from a diplomat's point of view, would that be like the ideal scenario?
No, I think I'm going to go with my rugby head and say we'd rather take the win than the draw. What we're really hoping, Japan have a tough. I'll be honest, they have a tough time getting out of that group. You know, like Ireland and Scotland are two very strong teams, and there's only two teams that can go through. But you never know. Japan have shocked people before. They've really stepped up at the World Cup in 2015. What we're hoping is that after the group stage, when it gets to the knockout matches, that because Ireland and Japan have been in the same group, that a lot of Japanese people will support Ireland, and they'll see that we're number 2 in the world, and hopefully we're going to play really beautiful rugby, and that's what we're hoping to bring along some fans when the Japanese fans are looking for a second team in the tournament.
Excellent. All right, I have a bit of a strange question here that I like to ask people.
Mm-hmm.
If you could choose any point in time in history to go back and do what you do now, either in Japan or in Ireland, what point of history would that be?
I think working for the Irish Foreign Service, I think it would have to be after the foundation of the state. I mean, at that time, Ireland was, quite poor. We were new onto the international stage. This is like 1922, and those first generation of diplomats who went out there and had to found those relationships with other countries. They had one hell of a job ahead of them, and in a lot of cases there, and don't question me on the names, but having read about them, a lot of them did an amazing job, and they really set the foundations for Ireland to be successful in Europe and the US and other places, and they really created that sense of Irish identity and exported that sense of Irish identity, and for the first time saying, like, what is Ireland, what does Ireland stand for, and they went out there and they communicated that message to other people around the world. So we're kind of we're standing on their shoulders in a sense.
That sounds like a really tough job. So when they first did that, had the countries that they were going to, did they already acknowledge that Ireland was a country, or was that one of the things they were going to seek?
Yeah, I know that at the time of independence there were some countries that just off the bat recognised us. I'm not an expert on the historical aspect of it, but for sure there would have been some of them who had to go out there and had to do some convincing. I mean, you can't send an ambassador to a country until that country has recognised you. So maybe an ambassador would go to one country and then they would be travelling to other countries to kind of communicate messages. I remember at that time the transmission of messages would be a little bit slower than it was today. So letters would have been going back and forth. So I mean, they really had quite a tough job, and they did a great job if you look at where we are today.
Nice. Final question here for our younger listeners out there who perhaps are thinking about diplomacy as a career. If you're in junior high school or high school, what are some books you think they should be reading, or experiences they should be having, skills they should be developing? What's some good advice for them?
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing to bear in mind is that not every foreign service is the same, and the routes into each one are not identical. Certainly, in the case of the Irish Foreign Service, we have this incredible mix of people with different backgrounds. We have physiotherapists and chemists and people like myself who have backgrounds in communications. The same route does not apply for everyone, and a lot of times what they will be looking for, certainly in the Irish context, and the way to know about, say, getting into the Japanese Foreign Service or maybe another country is to find people who have done it themselves. But really what I think they were looking for in our case was character and experience. They want people who have life experience, who have shown that they can travel independently overseas and take on new challenges and have kind of like put themselves out there in maybe like difficult situations. I am not, unfortunately, proficient in foreign languages. However, that is, a very important part of the job, and I'm studying Japanese slowly. But foreign language is really important. It is an absolute must to have fluent English to operate in the diplomatic world. All the diplomats we meet from every country all speak English. Most of them also have their native language plus a third language as well. So get your English under your belt, and then maybe another one. Language is really important. And in terms of skills, I think a variety of working environments where you've really challenged yourself. Really good. I would recommend to everyone to start off with voluntary work. When you are young, in your free time, if you can volunteer with an organization, it could be maybe you're really, really good at social media and there's some organization in your community that, maybe it's run by slightly older people and they don't know how to do social media. Get involved, give them a bit of your time, give them 6 months or whatever. And that gives you a little bit of experience. And then through volunteering, you meet really interesting people who are going to help you further along the line. So I couldn't recommend that more than enough. In terms of reading, I'm sure there are some wonderful books out there. I think reading about your own country's foreign policy is really important. Look for autobiographies and biographies of political leaders from your country, diplomats if they've written them, and then generally just to be really aware of what's going on in the world. I don't think that you could do this job unless you genuinely loved international affairs, foreign affairs, because it's a lot of long days. A lot of times to be frustrated by what you're doing, like with any job, and you gotta love it in order to keep doing it. So if you do love it, then you'll also love reading about it, and just make sure you know what's going on in the world, and try to have opinions. Always challenge yourself, challenge your opinions, and try to develop them.
Excellent. That sounds like some solid advice there. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for stopping in, Chris Green.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
All right, and there you have it. Thank you everyone for listening today. I'd love to hear from you, so please send your comments, thoughts, or questions, or just say hi at hello@inspiretokyo.com. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please share it with a friend. We are always looking for new listeners. And be sure to subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcasts. See you next time.